Go to homage.com to get some of the freshest clothes in sports. And don't forget to use the promo code WORSTTAKE at checkout to get 15% off. What is up, guys? My name is Quincy Carrier, and this is another episode of Q&A where I take your questions from Patreon, from Twitter, from YouTube, and answer them here on this show. You ask them, I answer them. So we're going to jump into the first question from Nate Carroll from Patreon, who says, a lot of Baker Mayfield's replies on Twitters are to Colin Cowherd's dumb thoughts. Do you think he's in the right by defending himself and absolutely destroying Cowherd too? Or do you think he's boosting his views and should leave him be? All right, so this is a multi-part question. So the first part of your question, should Baker not defend himself? I think in the offseason, he can do whatever he wishes because it's his free time. He can spend that however he wants. If he wants to spend that warring with Colin Cowherd, he can do that. Now, do I think at a certain point, especially during the season, this can start to get just a little bit old? I would say, yeah, there is a risk of that. I'm kind of numb. Like every time I see a headline to Baker versus Colin Cowherd, I kind of just now ignore it because I think I've seen it all when it comes to those two. But, you know, Baker is who he is. He's a guy who can't let anything go. We knew that when we drafted him, so I can't fault somebody for being who they are or tell them not to be themselves when all they've done is be themselves and overcome so much. And the second part to that question is, do I think he's boosting Cowherd's views? If he weren't messing with Baker, he would find somebody else to mess with. So, you know, I don't think it's really going to affect his views. Colin Cowherd, you know, as much as I don't like how he goes about things and how much of a troll he is himself a national brand. So he's going to get attention and relevancy right now just because he's, you know, hot in that space. So I don't think they need each other in that way. And I think if it weren't Baker, he would be picking on somebody else. I mean, the guy's been doing this for years. He knows what he's doing. So, you know, you're dealing with the professional troll, you know. The next question is from Mr. Orange One on Twitter, who says, do you think there will be a strike in 2020? No one's really saying much about it, but I know the contract is up then. Well, this has picked up steam recently. I've heard a few outlets talk about it, ESPN, Fox Sports 1. And I think it's something that the NFL Players Union should consider. I honestly think it's something they should do. I think NFL players should have guaranteed contracts. And I understand that as a fan wanting that for the players, that might mean I'll lose a few games in the 2020 season. I'm more than willing to be okay with that because I think there's some things that the players have been asking for and have been needing that have been neglected for far too long. And I think guaranteed contracts, you know, are one of them. And I understand maybe they might not get a fully guaranteed contract. They might not have the leverage to pull that off. But I think they can work it to where everybody gets at least 80% guarantees of what that money is on the contract instead of people signing these completely non-guaranteed contracts that are just paper. I think the exploitation of that has gone too far. So, yeah, I think the NFL players need to strike to be able to get guaranteed contracts and to be able to up the minimum salary of a low-level NFL player so that, you know, guys who played 1 or 2 years in the league don't end up in such a messy financial situation because they're not making the money you would assume a professional athlete would make. So I would fully stand with the players if they decided to take a strike in 2020. I think that that's something they really should consider if the owners are still not budging on the guaranteed contract situation. Next question comes from Sean Ballantyne, who says, why do people want McCoy so bad? He's an aging defensive tackle who wants much more money as a backup. Well, I think, you know, the market for Gerald McCoy should be a team that is really close to making a Super Bowl type run that wants another solid veteran piece to put him over the top in case of injury or in case of, needed depth or in case they needed to switch up how they play on defense. And I think Gerald McCoy adds excellent value to those teams. Yeah, if you're Cincinnati, it doesn't make sense to throw money at Gerald McCoy because he's older. But if you're Cleveland, if you're Baltimore, if you're New England, it makes a lot more sense because you're trying to win it all this year instead of win it all in the next 4 years. So throw the money at Gerald McCoy, give him a shorter deal, but he is absolutely worth the money he's going to sign for because he's such a valuable veteran depth piece that gives you so much insurance on whatever defensive line he signs on. The next question comes from Max Sherman, who says, will Austin Seibert be a top 10 fantasy kicker? I'm going to change this to whoever the Browns kicker is going to be will be a top 10 fantasy kicker because I don't even know if Austin Seibert's going to make the team. But whoever the kicker is, will they be a top 10 kicker? I will say no, because if you learn anything from the Greg Williams, Freddie Kitchens era and those 8 games in Cleveland last year, is that this team is going to take a lot of risk. They're going to go for it a lot more in traditional field goal situations, and they have the personnel to feel comfortable with that. So I don't think this team is going to settle for a lot of field goals. I don't think this team is going to lead the league in field goals attempted. So I would not suggest signing the Browns field goal kicker. And that is something that hasn't been said in like 10 years. So kudos to the Browns. Next question comes from Browns fan 512 on Twitter, who says, whom in your opinion has the chance to be the 5th and 6th wide receiver on the roster behind Odell Beckham, Landry, Higgins, Callaway, between Strong, Willis, Ratley, and Shealy? I'm thinking Strong will be the 5th. What do you think? Well, I got to see if Ricardo Lewis is still on the roster. I mean, he was able to add a lot to the team when he was on it, but granted, those were 0-16 teams. But I still think he has a chance to stick here. But I think, yeah, it's probably between Strong or Willis because of their height. Height is something that this wide receiving core needs. Strong has a case of the dropsies throughout his career, even at Arizona State, I believe. I would go with Derek Willis out of all of those options, though, because I think Derek Willis showed the most, was able to come on late last year. Well, whenever the Browns had a wide receiver shortage last year and make some plays for the Browns. His injury history does concern me, but when you're talking about the 5th or 6th wide receiver, these guys are kind of interchangeable. But yeah, my wild guess would be Derek Willis. Next question comes from Panini Trademark, who says, do you think that Denzel Ward will take the next step to be a top 5 cornerback this year? I'm assuming. I think it's all set up for him. They got him support on the back end, on the front end, and to the side of him. So yeah, it's up to Denzel Ward whether he's going to take that step and be a top 5 defensive back. And I think the biggest thing that's going to impact Denzel Ward and help his ability to become an even more effective defensive back is, one, they're going to have more depth on the cornerbacks on the other side of him, with Greedy Williams being added in the 2nd round of the draft, but also with Olivier Vernon, with Sheldon Richardson, with Larry Ogunjobi, with Myles Garrett, and with potentially Gerald McCoy. You're going to have the quarterbacks having to make a lot more rush decisions, as hopefully that defensive line will be able to pressure the quarterback much more often than last year, which will leave Denzel Ward in a position to thrive. So I think it is completely 100% possible for Denzel Ward to be a top 5 corner this year. And I would put the only question mark about that is if he can stay healthy, he will be a top 5 corner. If he doesn't, then we got bigger problems to worry about when it comes to Denzel Ward. The next question is from the Vault Dweller, who says, how do you think Sione Taki will fare in his rookie season? Also, how fun is his name to say? I mean, it is that is the thing about Sione Taki, right? Like, he has to be good with that last name, because if he sucks, he is automatically the dude who takes the blame for any play. Like, he could just be near it, but if you see Taki on the back of that jersey and something bad happened, you're blaming a dude named Taki because it's just funner to blame that guy. But on a serious note, how do I fare? how do I think he will fare this rookie season? I think you won't hear much about Sione Taki this rookie season. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think he's a developmental piece. I think that's a guy that they're going to train and, try to bring up slower than other guys. I think Mac Wilson might have a more immediate impact because that's somebody they feel like can be ready now. But Sione Taki is more of a project. So I would anticipate you would see less of him, probably see him sparingly on special teams. The next question is from Ami Kessler, who says, who will get more receptions, Jarvis or OBJ? I think Jarvis Landry will definitely have more receptions than Odell Beckham Jr., but I think Odell Beckham Jr. will have more yards and touchdowns. I think Jarvis is going to be the more relied upon when Baker breaks the pocket, the guy he looks for outside of Rashard Higgins. So he's going to ultimately get more receptions, but Odell is going to be able to stretch that field. He's going to be able to make chunk plays, and he's going to be able to get the ball in the end zone for Baker Mayfield. Next question comes from Red Legend 57, who says, if the Browns do sign Gerald McCoy, how do you think they will use Larry and Gerald in the system? Well, they'll use them in rotation, I would assume. And I think they'll put Gerald McCoy, they will have packages where they put guys like Gerald McCoy and Larry Ogunjobi side by side in more pass rush situations, or they can have more beef with Gerald McCoy and Sheldon Richardson in obvious rundowns. They can also have more flexibility now that they have more defensive tackles. They can run out all three of them and have Miles kind of play a rover. They can do a lot with the extra guy on that defensive line, especially in a 4-3. You've seen the Browns kick Miles inside and have Jannard Avery be a rusher. The Browns will have a lot of flexibility. So that's why trying to get Gerald McCoy would be a really good and positive thing for the Browns. But as this thing goes on further and further and longer, the more I question the Browns' ability to actually sign him, because it just seems like it's not going in our direction. Last question comes from Giants Nation on YouTube, who says, how do you feel about concussions in football and football being softer and the game being less physical when it's a game where people tackle each other? Okay, well, this is a tough question because, I get where the guy's coming from. Football is obviously a physical sport. Why are we so worried about the consequences of a physical sport? But I would offer, on the other hand, to that comment, is that while football is a physical sport, it is also a sport that we hold at a pastime. It's a sport that we get our kids involved at a very young age. And it's a sport that, as years and years have gone by, we have seen the terrible effects that it has had on people who play the game long term. And I think us as fans, us as people who, say we care about these players that we root for, I think it's upon us to be able to accept that the game's going to get less physical, that the game's going to get less violent in exchange for the people who play the game to be able to live longer and more healthier lives free of CTE, if that's what we're trying to accomplish. Now, there's certain elements of CTE and there's certain elements of trauma that you're not going to be able to eliminate, just by the nature of the game. That's understood. But when it comes to concussions, I think that's something that it is completely 100% the right step to take that step behind, in my opinion, because I think concussions are something of an extremely serious nature. You can only have so many concussions in a lifetime without having it have adverse effects on, your ability to just function every day. And when it's coming to something like that, that's beyond the game. That's beyond having hurt knees after you play. That's beyond being sore every day because you played football all your life. When you're not able to speak properly, when you're not able to talk properly, when your mind has been mangled so much that you make decisions that are seemingly just completely irrational and hurt your family or yourself, then that becomes something of a more serious nature. And I think that's why it is 100% imperative that in order to protect this game that we love, to protect this game that we want to continue on, and protect this game that many of us want to pass down to a younger generation, that we take the concussion thing 100% seriously. I know it's a physical game. I know some people don't like that. I know some people, they played through concussions in their playing days. But the world has changed. We're seeing the effects of that now in real time. And it's something that could kill this sport, if we don't handle it properly. So I think the NFL 100%, needs to take these concussions seriously. And I'm happy in cases that they do. And that is why when it comes to talking about somebody like Denzel Ward and his concussion history, I am sincerely worried about that because he can only have so many in a lifetime, especially in a playing career. And again, just look at somebody like Jordan Cameron, who had a lot of promise as a very athletic tight end, who never was able to play past like 29 because he had so many concussions early on in his career. So concussions is a serious deal. I think the NFL is absolutely doing the right thing by being serious and cutting down some of the games more unnecessarily and harder things. And I think football also is a much more enjoyable sport than just the violence of it. I think when you boil it down to just, it's being physical and violent, I think you do the game of football a disservice. I think a lot of what I love about football is the chess match that goes on from a snap-to-snap basis, the strategy between two coaches, the athleticism involved in the players, especially in the skill players. And I think a lot of that is the beauty of the game. Physicalness was something that was cool that came along with the game, but I don't think the overt physicalness of like the 80s and the 70s and in the 90s and early 2000s does not have to be the calling card of football in order for football to be football. So there can be a lot more to the game. The game's inherently physical. If it gets to a point to where you're playing flag football in the NFL, then yeah, it comes to a question whether you should even play it if you can't play football. I get that point. But as far as taking concussions seriously and taking steps in order to limit the amount of blows to the head players have to take, I'm all for that. And I think the game can evolve past that. But that's just my opinion. Let me know your opinion down in the comment section down below. And that is going to be it, guys, for all the questions this week. There were a lot of Gerald McCoy questions, so I think that's a hot topic between the people who watch the channel. So let me know what you think of Gerald McCoy, what he can add to whatever team picks him up, and what team do you think is going to pick him up in the comment section down below. Again, guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you really like this channel, please ding that notification bell so you can know every time I upload. And if you have a buck or two to spare, please consider joining the Patreon and having your name added to this nice ESPN ripoff ticker that I have down below. But again, guys, that's going to be it for this week's episode of Q&A. Have a great night and have a good day.